as right then as we come out, then they go ahead and close the burn off, and then off we go. As we were coming down the canyon on this burn, we did have a wind shift on that, and the fire started to chase us down the canyon, and we were starting to outrun our ignition crews on the outer edges. So on this particular fire, me and Hans Grunden, our other interior igniter on this burn, proceeded to quit igniting on the interior, and we went to the outer edges to help our burn crews on the outside expand and safeten the black lines as we were coming into some tree groves and other stuff like this, so we could secure that burn line faster and more securely, where we were on four-wheelers and we can travel a lot bigger area a lot faster with narrow burn lines and that. And once we did get that established, them burn lines established, our wind shifted back to the way it was supposed to be. So we were able to go back down into the bottoms, pick up our internal ignition where we'd left off.
My name's Hans Grunden. I am a fire igniter, both on the line and some interior lighter. And also when needed, we'll patrol the lines, fire lines with an ATV sprayer. For the interior part, we got the whole north end of this burn burned out, so we had a good fire break. And then I went down inside and we started burning off little pocket by pocket. You drive into the pocket and get turned around and get a good safe escape route. And then you take your torch and your lighter and you light the torch and you string fire out along the cut and stuff trees that I put in there, which you just cut the trees with a tree shear and stuff them in under the live trees as far up the bank as you can get. That way when the wind takes the fire up the hill, and it'll hit those trees and it'll burn most of the side off. So that's what we try to get, so it climbs the hills better and get a better kill that way. You always got to have an escape route. You never want to light going into a pocket, because that wind could shift in that canyon really easy, and it happens all the time there's so many pockets and different points down in those canyons that the wind's always never coming from one direction. It's always whirling around and stuff, so you always light coming out so you don't get light going in and get stuck and have some problems. We were lighting, heading south. You always have radio contact with the outside line crews on both the east and the west side, and you never want to get ahead of them, because if you get ahead of them, then you're going to be sending too much fire and pressure or momentum up to the lines, and then it's going to jump the line, and then you have a lot of problems. So radio contact is a very, very important feature that we have to keep.
As a trainer, on most burns, I would work with the burn boss to maintain the integrity of the burn and oversee the entire process. However, on this burn, we're working with this group because of the level of the experience of the Loess Canyon Rangeland Alliance perform other duties. Here on this particular burn, I work with individuals to teach them advanced ignition techniques, and also maybe do some things as simple as showing some of the newer people how to run a hose on a wet line. To summarize how the LCRA conducts a prescribed burn in the Loess Canyons, initially they will meet on site, prepare their equipment, fill their water tanks, make sure all of the water delivery systems are operational. The LCRA requires that each member check out the equipment they're going to use. The corresponding number is written down next to their name, and they're responsible for returning that at the end of the burn. Fill drip torches, stage the water tenders strategically around the unit so that the slip-on units can refill without going clear back to headquarters. Once they have the equipment prepared and checked out, they will have a briefing. The burn boss goes over the burn plan in detail. Usually we will have a large map on the wall that has a map of the burn and where the units are going to be, as well as an ignition sequence and a team roster where the teams are assigned their duties. Normally the teams will group together for the briefing so they know who's going to be working with each other. The burn boss will go through the burn plan in detail, telling each team exactly what they need to do and the timing that they need to do it in. After the briefing, the resources relocate to the ignition point. The slip-ons, the ATVs, the igniters, each team positions its resources in the appropriate position faced in the right direction. They lay down the wet line. The landowner lights the test fire. If the test fire is deemed appropriate, then the burn is given the go-ahead. Normally in these canyon burns, after we establish the initial black line, we require some internal ignition. As you can see, often the terrain is steep. It takes a long time for the backfire to back down that hill. We speed this process up by foot ignition with narrow strips and the widening as they go down. As you can see, the wind really funnels up these pockets, also uphill, creating some fairly intense fire behavior. So we have our resources focused, concentrated on the downwind side. They are able to catch anything that might come across because of this intense fire behavior. Also, often not in this case, but there are pockets of fairly large cedars pretty close to the line. These have to be torched. They have to be ignited while we have the resources there, so if they do send something across the line, our teams aren't scattered around the line but are focused there and are able to catch any kind of an escape. After we create the downwind pocket, a minimum of 300 feet, sometimes wider before we move on, minimum of 300 feet on the downwind side of black. Then we begin to proceed up the sides with the wet line. Again, as described before, we usually have a lead engine laying down a wet line, one igniter that's lighting the external line, and often have a second igniter that's doing some narrow strips or strip head fires to increase the black line more quickly. Again, particularly on the downwind flank, if the fire is backing or flanking into the wind, it can take a long time to create a safe line, and we don't want to delay the burn or delay the team on the other side that's on the upwind flank. So we go ahead and use 2, sometimes 3 torches to take the narrow strips and get that black cleaned out again for 100 to 300 feet on these sides. Also, particularly if there are pockets of trees along the line, we will take perpendicular lines, usually starting from inside the unit and proceeding out to tie in with the crews on the outside to lay strip head fires. What this does is it creates a mini head fire running along the line, which again increases the black a lot faster, but it also kills a lot of the cedar trees, really increases the mortality along those edges, where prior to using this technique, a lot of these trees were not killed because the flank fire, the backing fire, the flanking fire did not generate enough fire activity to kill the cedar trees, whereas the mini head fires created by this strip head firing, they do. So this is one technique that's greatly increased our kill of cedars on the downwind flank as we were building that flank. Again, this creates more fire behavior close to the line. We have to be very diligent. We have spot swatters or spotters that are out watching into the rough or into the unburned area. We also have lookouts posted if possible with radios to call in anything they may see across the line. The spotter's job is to watch across the line and immediately suppress anything that comes down. We have had spot fires on almost every burn, some of them numerous, but have always caught the fires and prevented any kind of incident or escape. So that's another critical component that we use is spotters scattered out in the green, the unburned side, watching for wherever the embers are coming down, watching for the spot fires and immediately putting those out. As the teams, the wet lining ignition teams, proceed up each of their sides into the wind respectively. We then start with the internal ignition. Normally this will be once we have the downwind pockets burned out on foot that are too rough to get the bikes into. Buck is burning everything.
Bird Boss, Rich here. Go ahead, Rich. Do we need to move a spotter down along the west side or stay on this north end?
You can move one spotter here. Eldon was here, but I don't see him now, but you need to move one spotter down this direction.
Okay, he'll do that. Thank you.
We will have ATVs going up and down the valleys, in the pockets and sometimes up on the ridges, working together, usually not more than two, working along the interior, putting fire down on the interior of the burn. They are slightly behind the exterior line to keep anything from challenging that line, make sure that line is developed well enough that the fire that they send coming up out of the canyons does not cross that line or does not throw embers across that line. So they remain somewhat behind those exterior igniters, work together so they don't cut each other off in the canyons. But what they do is they create, again, more head fires instead of having a flanking, backing fire that is coming into the cedar trees. They have a series of head fires, strip head fires, that actually cause significantly more mortality. And they also create a big heat source inside the unit, which helps build the entire intensity of the entire fire, and also as the ring is closed, they can actually pull the lines of the fire together, somewhat similar to a typical ring fire on a flat grass field. As the exterior igniters approach the upwind side, they will generally turn the corner a little bit, start a little bit of a head fire, leaving a hole for the interior igniters to exit before they close the ring and send the head fire down through the unit. The ATVs patrolling back down the line begin mopping up immediately after the line has expanded and moved into the unit. Begin mopping up everything along the line, putting out the smokes, the cow chips. We also pull a harrow section behind an ATV that breaks up the cow chips, which can really be a big help on this. The cow chips can sit and smolder for a long time, and squirting them with water is not very effective. They have to be broken up either by foot or by rake or by hand tool. But with the ATV, with the harrow, it eliminates that step and really helps safeten up and speed up the mop-up process. So the mopping up begins pretty soon after the ignition team has gone by. Once the ignition teams have met at the upwind side of the unit and closed the ring, then the engines immediately begin mopping up as well. They mop up for approximately 50 to 100 feet from the exterior of the unit, putting out all smokes. If they have heavier fuels that may be burning longer, branches and things, they may go mop up a little bit farther. The entire unit is mopped up 50 to 100 feet in before it's considered safe. At the end of the burn season, the Lusk Canyon Rangeland Alliance members gather for an afterglow meeting, and they discuss what went right, what went wrong with the various burns that they've completed in the landscape. An average year, they'll do somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 acres. To date, they've done a little over 20,000 acres in this landscape and are really starting to have some impact. A lot of these acres are contiguous with the with the heavy cedar kill, the native warm season grasses have really come back. They're starting to see more bobwhite quail. They're seeing prairie chickens that they hadn't seen in quite some time. They're also seeing mule deer come back in and reclaim some of the habitat that was previously lost to the white-tailed deer.
From our operation, basically, from what prescribed fire has done for us, we've increased our grazing capacity from using prescribed fire on operation. We've roughly went from a $240 a pair a month, or from $240 a pair in a summer 5.5-month grazing period to about $150. So it's about a $90 savings by putting prescribed fire on our ground and trying to control the cedar population. We went from roughly a 40 to 50% canopy down to, maybe to 10 to a 15 on treated areas. And from a bottom line, that's about a $90 savings per pair. If you add that to, or take that off your input on your cows, I mean, that's a really substantial savings from what we've saved by just using prescribed fire. And the initial cost of putting in prescribed fire kind of varies on the amount of people you have and the amount of input you put into your unit, but it really is small compared to the savings you receive throughout, after your burn and throughout the years after you have had your prescribed fire. It really helps out a bunch.
Prescribed fire in the Loess Canyons area and elsewhere across the state provides many benefits for wildlife, primarily grassland species, but it can also provide benefits for other species as well. In the Loess Canyons out here, we have one endangered species, the American burying beetle. And despite difficulties in capturing this species the last couple of years, which has kind of messed up our results a little bit, we have seen a pattern where we capture more American burying beetles in areas where we have less cedars. And that's pretty important. We're out there trying to promote cedar removal, grazing management, use of prescribed fire, and a variety of activities. And we do like to see the results showing that American burying beetles are more common in those more open areas. In addition, the fire and cedar removal are beneficial to things like greater prairie chickens, upland sandpipers, and other grassland birds, along with northern bobwhite, which are kind of a grassland bird that likes shrubby, weedy cover as well. And those early successional habitats following the fire in those grasslands are very, very good habitat for northern bobwhites. There are other species that can benefit from prescribed fire and cedar removal out in landscapes like the Loess Canyons, including white-tailed deer. The understory get more shrub